Yeah,
They say about Colorado. Yeah.
yeah.
So
This is Berlin.
yeah, so we have the same thing in Cape Town. Like
Oh.
you will have 4 seasons every day because of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Because of the Indian and Atlantic Ocean meeting, with
Yeah.
all the winds and the rains and stuff, it's a nightmare. People actually blow away. Like you'll open up your jacket and stand like this in the air, and it will
Wow.
blow you 5 to 7 meters away.
Whoa.
Yeah,
It's,
the winds are crazy.
Wow.
also the wind chill factor is tough.
Wow. What is this?
Who is that?
I think my headset's breaking. It like packs up. Who said something?
Carlo, you also moved to Berlin. You're not originally from Berlin?
No.
I think no one is originally from
You know.
Berlin.
No one is originally from anywhere, right? We agreed on that yesterday. Where are you from, Carlo?
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria.
I'm a Bulgarian.
So you moved from Bulgaria to Berlin
Yeah.
how many years ago?
4 years and a half.
Oh, 4.5 years. Oh, not too long.
No, not too long.
And Valentina, you're from Cape Town.
No, I'm from a small town called White River.
White River?
Yeah. Who's that? Oh, I don't know.
Sounds American.
No, it's yeah, it's a small town, White River. It's in Mpumalanga. It's close to it's about 20 minutes from the Kruger Park.
Kruger Park. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And
So you did
then
a lot of independent safari when you were there, right?
yeah. So then I moved to Johannesburg, and I was in Johannesburg for about 10 years,
Hmm.
8.5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 10 years. And then I came now to Berlin. Yeah,
Mhm.
been here now 4 months.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
4 months. Wow.
It's been
He's
interesting.
very new, yeah. He's very new.
Give me 1
What,
second, yeah.
what brought you to Berlin?
Other things actually, mostly the economy, because the South African economy, it's
Yeah.
it's terrible. But yeah,
Le-
it's the experience, I guess, that
Yeah.
brought me here. That and the economy, and just change of life, I guess. Change
Yeah.
of
Don't lie.
whole.
Don't lie. Just say that you found GCP and come aboard and came aboard.
So I wanted to move to Europe. Sure, it's always been a dream to move to Europe.
Yeah.
But I first wanted to gain the work knowledge in South Africa, because it's a different class of work that you do in
Mhm.
South Africa compared to Europe or to the US for that matter.
Yeah.
So I first wanted to gain that knowledge and life experience and work experience,
Yeah.
because I can promise you now, if I came in my 20s to Europe, I would have been a different person,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
because you get brought up differently in
Yeah.
South Africa. And I realize that being here, I see kids doing funny things, and I'm like, no, this is, yeah. So that's why I say, if I was here in my 20s, I would have probably been in a rehab now.
Wow. Wow. That's super interesting. And Jacob, where are you originally from?
Jaga's nowhere.
Is Jacob with us?
I don't think so yet.
Yeah. I think I can guess where Shachar is from.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear people's stories. You know, we wander around, we move from one country to another. We actually moved to the States back in 2013, and then we moved back here. We moved to Colorado. We lived there for 4 years. We bought a house, and I worked for the government, for the U.S. government. I was the CISO for the local government in Colorado, and yeah, it was pretty interesting. And then at some point, we decided to come back here to Israel because our kids became too American for us,
Yeah.
too delicate. You see what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
like you wanted to have this toughness, and we
exactly.
decided that we need our kids to be more Israelis before we can look at America as an option. We are citizens, so we have dual citizenship. We can go anytime we want, but nah, I think we're gonna spend some time here till the kids become the Israelis that we would like them to be, the toughness of Israelis, the chutzpah of Israelis. and then
I
then they can do whatever they want.
I think if there's a place to live in the US, because I did consider it at some stage, and then I was there for I actually did work in the US for about 3 months, 3.5 months.
Hmm.
For the previous company, I did a project there for 3.5 months, and
Well.
sorry,
Where in the States? You know, the States is a big place.
I was in New York, and then I went also to Boston.
Hmm.
And between those two cities, I told myself I would never ever live in New York. There's no possibility.
I agree with you. I hate New York. I despise New York.
It's a nice city to go on holiday for 3 or 5 days, because then you see everything, but never. And then if I had to choose the US to live in, it would most probably be either Colorado or Texas.
Yeah, Colorado is amazing. Colorado
Denver is
so
amazing city.
different than the coast. You know, the East Coast, the West Coast, the Midwest is so. It is, you know, it is America that you want to experience.
Yeah,
I think.
with the tornadoes and everything.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how many of you actually grew in the 90s, in early 90s or mid 90s. There was a song back then when the whole moon parties in the East and Far East took place in Thailand on beaches and all. So we had a song going on. It's called Sunscreen. Are you familiar with that song?
Oh,
Buzz Lerman. You can
Yeah,
Google that, or I can send it to you.
Sunscreen song.
Rafael,
Yeah,
do you remember that song,
yeah, of
Sunscreen?
course. Yeah, Sunscreen
And
song. Yeah.
it's kind of a song that, you know, gives you pieces of advice to life, to everyone. And there are a couple of lines there that Buzz Lerman says, "Live in New York once, but leave before it makes you hard, and live in Northern California once, but leave before it makes you soft." So yeah, it's exactly that. So the midsection, the Midwest, I think Colorado is the best place, one of the best places to live and raise family. But you know, coming from Israel, we had different standards for how we see our kids develop and their skills develop, and we wanted them to be more Israelis than Americans back here. But who knows? Who knows what will happen next? Uh, so is Jega with us now? Jega, you with us? Nope. All right.
It's a big. I have to say, it's a big sacrifice for the kids.
To move to Israel?
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine that one of 3 years. We've only been in Israel now 3 years.
And how many years have you been in the US?
We've been there 4 years, but it was very critical years at their age because my elder son was 10, and the little one was 1.5. So it's 4 years that they remember most.
Wow.
Their childhood is an American childhood. And out of this 3 years that we here in Israel, almost 1 year is the Corona year. So they don't interact, they don't go out. You know, it's very difficult to get this kind of character when, you know, full year, no interaction with Israelis, no nothing. The little one, she's now 9. She's going to be 9 next month. She speaks only English, fluent English,
Wow.
American English, but only English. You know, we've been here for 3 years. We speak both Hebrew and English, but she's more comfortable in English. So yeah, we'll see about that. I think going to the army and doing some military service will definitely make them tougher.
Do you want your kids to go to the military?
I want my kids to be happy and independent, so they decide on their own. My
Okay.
eldest son is 17 and a half now, and he's going full-blown military. He's going to serve, you know, the toughest services that they can be. He's going for Sayarot, elite units out there. He's training for that, and he's applying for those. Who knows?
Is that a mandatory thing still, or do people
What's
have to
that?
choose? So is that still a mandatory thing where people have to actually choose either military or go to university or something?
Yeah, it's mandatory service for both men and
You
women.
don't choose. You
You
don't
don't
choose,
need to,
Valentino.
but
Don't
you
choose.
can specify your preferences as to where and what you want to do in the military service. They might and might not consider your preferences.
Okay, so it's completely mandatory.
Completely mandatory
Yes.
for both men and women. Men serve 32 months, women 30 months. That's the mandatory service. But for those that will go to units, they will have to sign another year or two, just to make sure that they repay their training to the country. Um, there are plenty of units. Cyber units are considered elite units. And that's basically what makes Israel very interesting in the cyber market. Um, anyway, let's go back to our domain 8 and where we stopped. So I don't know what about Jacob, but if someone can ping him and remind him that we're continuing, that'd be great. If not, then I can probably watch the recording here. So software testing. Software testing is all about us challenging the controls that we expect to have in our software by design. So look at security and privacy by design, and that takes me back to domain 6 when we talked about vulnerability assessments and penetration testing and all that. So in your questions, you will probably get references for static analysis, dynamic analysis, as mentioned before, right? Remember that when we run them on technology, we want to make sure that we are efficient, and most likely we are to use tools and technology out there. But, and this is very important for your CISSP exam, the tests and testing your application, even the application as a software, as a system, as technology, still has areas to test in people and processes. Okay? The process of creating an identity. They might ask you a question on system development, but the question is really about the process of creating an identity or privileged identity. What do you do with it? Oh, you create logs because you want to monitor. The right process is to log all privileged identity, privileged credential identity with all their actions. All right. And the people, the privileged accounts, we need them to know about security, so not be lightheaded with the role of admin as we appoint them as admins in our software. So both static and dynamic tests must include the representation of people and processes as well as technology, which is pretty obvious. So again, if you look at questions level 4 and 5, these levels will probably include the people and processes as well. All right, so just bear in mind as you go through this. And a good representation of our people is the QA, people and processes is the QA and user acceptance test. So quality assurance is really processes to see that the right processes are followed as we develop the software. And UAT, user acceptance test, is to get the user, the people's experience with the system. Because I might develop this wonderful system, and at the end of the day, it does everything for the user, but the user will not use it. Okay, so it will not go through the user acceptability tests. And this reminds me, and should remind all of us, the biometric testing or the biometric endorsement of the users, right? Biometric systems, as we implement them, we consider the 2-minute enrollment and then 6 to 10 seconds of authentication. Okay, so always have that in mind as you look at those questions. It's all it's all connected to the same place. The environments, as we build the software development environments for our developing teams, we want to separate those environments. There are basically at least two main environments that we should have in any developing organization, in any system development organization. First environment is the environment, the dirty environment, quote unquote, for the development teams, to put everything there, to use test data, not real data, to use credentials, very weak credentials, but that's the development area. That's development segmented network. It's not the production network. And then the other one, the second one, at least two, the second one should be the production. And for that one, we need to make sure that we follow all processes and regulations and we do all the analysis because that's the real money maker environment. Okay. In between, if we take it to the next level, we can have development environment, staging environment, which is the pre-production environment. It's also called staging environment. And then we have the production environment. We always look at the environments as, hierarchical or linear. So you move from the development to staging and from staging to production. And you roll back. If you need to roll back, you roll back from production to staging and from staging to development. Okay? All right, guys? Peer-to-peer networks, we mentioned this in domain 4. Peer-to-peer networks are both parties, both computers, both systems act as both client and server of each other. And those can perform all actions as client and as server and inherit the vulnerabilities of client-server systems. Privilege escalation is another method of threat or another type of threat. When a perpetrator or someone that wants to affect badly our performance will probably target a low-level credentials, low-level identity, and from that we'll look for the next level to hop and all the way up to domain admin or even that KDC that we saw when we talked about Kerberos in domain 5. So that level will control all other credentials and all other identities, and from that point, that area is the holy grail of those threats, of most threats today, and that is the area that we need to consider as we develop the system. Also, when developing the system, we also want to consider memory management and memory management technique. Okay, we talked about memory, we talked about that in domain 2, and we talked about that in domain 3 and 5 and on, and even domain 6. Managing your memory is key to the performance of your application. So you want to avoid areas such as memory leaks and buffer overflow, the memory management vulnerabilities. You want to address those with your teams, with your development teams. The software and the system development also include configuration management, and that brings me back to that parking lot with all the white cars and the red car in the middle of it. So that one will take you to that area of, what is the right configuration and how do we follow that constantly? And when a change takes place, what must be captured and reported and documented? Okay, so every change must be documented for that matter. And again, kind of repeating it from a different angle, talking about application security. Code change control or code review in general, as we move from one environment, and we mentioned the development environments, as we move from one environment to development to testing / pre-production / staging environment, we go from one environment to the other and then we roll back the same way. Okay, so we cannot move from production to development. We first need to go back to testing and then make sure that the problem still exists before we move to development and vice versa. Hi, Alan, welcome aboard.
Hi, good morning, good day. Sorry for missing the first part. I had to.
That's cool, it's all recorded.
I'll listen to the recording later.
Yep. Check out the shared folder that I sent you all a link today. I uploaded some stuff this morning. So check out that one, and you can probably copy everything that is there. I will also add the recordings of today later on today, so you will probably notice that change as well. Jenga, wow, that's the first
sorry guys, there was an
code. Wow, man, it's beautiful.
yeah, there was thank you. Sorry, there was issue here, and I just
That's
I was
that's
working on during the break time and just I closed it. So
that's fine. That's cool.
thank you.
Okay, so code change control. We said that we move from one environment to another hierarchically. Okay, so in a sequential order, development to test slash staging slash pre-production, and then from that to production and back. Okay, so we roll back from production to test to development. All right, real good.
Mm-hmm.
For the software development method, we have the same measures as in anything that we do around the business. We want to consider the risks. We want to consider the vulnerabilities, the threats, the entire characters or variables of the formula. What will be the impact on our environment once we launch that system? What will be the probability? Okay, that will bring me back to testing, software testing, the user acceptance. What will be the probability of that impact gets materialized and become a risk? Okay, those considerations, and also access control is big on software development, and you should consider those controls first and foremost before implementing any other control. So before implementing disaster or backups to your software, you should consider access control. Before considering cryptography, you should consider access control. And that is a derivative of the question of what is my classification of information? What type of data am I going to hold on this application? What kind of database is connected? Who are the credentials, the users that are going to use that application? And what are the different credentials and how do we manage those identities? Any questions on this part? Before we move to the last chapter of our book. All right, no questions?
Mm-hmm. No.
All right. Are you ready for the last chapter? All right, let's do this, people. Chapter 21. Chapter 21 is all about the malicious code and application attacks. So this one is a very short one because we mentioned a lot of this before, a lot of threats, a lot of descriptions on scenarios, risk scenarios, and so on during the bootcamp and during the CISSP in general. However, here, ISC is really focused on what can go wrong with our application. And for that matter, I added the whole OWASP top 10 to this part. Okay, this part could have been only 10 slides, but I added OWASP top 10 and some more information that I think that is relevant for you that is not in the book. Okay, there is a representation, but it's not in your book. So we talk about application, we talk about malicious code. Malicious code is being treated as a virus that is out of control or under someone else. So the virus can propagate using file infection, service infection, boot sector infection, or macro infection. Is anybody not familiar with all this for here? This is the time to stop and ask, what is service injection? Is anybody not familiar with this? Okay. If you're not comfortable saying that I'm not familiar with this tier, just text me on a private message and I'll be more than happy to explain. But there can be YouTube videos that you can watch. Basically, one is for file as we know it, ransomware, and we know how the infection of those files takes place. Service is when you click for example, you click on a not secure, untrusted link, and then another service is created on your machine, another process is running on your machine. Boot sector is the beginning of everything on your machine, something that resides with as you boot the computer. This is a very sophisticated infection. And then macro infection, as we can find in any macro-enabled software. Any application that uses macros, for example, Excel, and any XML, any Office, the new Office, the Office 365 uses XML I think from version 2010 or 2013. So it's XML. XML is macro enabled by default, and any macro enabled application can run the macros that will actually execute some sort of a script on your machine. So if you trust the source and you trust the macro, run the script. If not, by all means, disable macros on your computer. Going back to basics, how do we deal with malicious code, malicious software? It's called antivirus, okay? Antivirus is a software, again, software that we use to detect either by signature or by behavior. And if we detect by behavior, it's called heuristics. Okay, so if anybody's not familiar with the word heuristic, elaborate on this in the book, because this is important. Heuristic is more of a behavioral of an application. We don't have a signature for it. We're not sure if it's in a database of malicious applications. Maybe it's something new. But we know that the behavior is promoting encryption or encrypting my personal files without providing me the key. And that can lead to a ransomware attack, okay? So many attacks that we can find both in the book and in general, but those are, treated again on this domain from that angle as well. So I would say, as you go back and look at the CISSP in general, those should come to light more than others. The first one is buffer overflow and everything that is related to memory management of your system. Trapdoors, backdoors, we talked about that. You think based on the Trojan horses and such, you think you downloaded an application to do one thing for you, and there were many applications that used security, cleaners of your registry, even free antiviruses that made you think that they heard to do security, so you downloaded them, and then they opened a door for the for the sender or the owner of that application in your system, and that's called a backdoor. The tuk-tuk, from time to check, to time to use of the application, we talked about, again, memory management. Memory management is big in the CISSP. So the application writes some sort of information, maybe sensitive information, down to a memory that resides next to the CPU or any memory area that it uses. It writes the information there. Maybe your information is now sensitive, but it resides in your system in the clear. Okay, so it's clear text. It's not encrypted. It's not protected. If someone looks at this part of memory and sees that information, you now have a potential data or information leakage. Okay, so you need to make sure that if you use the between time to use to time to check, between that area, use it in a secure place in your memory, in a secure and encrypted memory area. All right. Rootkit. It's very important that a rootkit is a collection of tools. It's not a malware. So if they ask you what a rootkit is, and I don't know if they will ask you this, but maybe they will mention the word rootkit. You need to remember that it's more than one application. There's no one cure for rootkit. If rootkit is used against you or in your network, you will need to look for defense in-depth answers. All right? Maybe you should write it down. Rootkit questions will trigger the defense in-depth and layered security approach in your answers. Okay? Make sense, guys? It's really important because it might be a question for you in your exam. So, OWASP. Are you familiar with OWASP? Anyone familiar with OWASP and wants to share?
I did a OWASP test in my previous company.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yes.
so
Yes.
care to share with us?
Yes. So they have created a website. So our target is to dump the backend database of a website.
Mm-hmm.
So we use a tool called SQL Map, which is in Kali Linux. So we used a SQL Map it was an agile model actually. So they are about to deliver to the customers, but they are still making some patches.
Mm-hmm.
So we used the SQL Map, and we successfully dumped the backend database and the rows and the columns and the user information and even the passwords.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So we triggered a rainbow table attack on the hashes, and we able to retrieve a few passwords actually.
Crazy. This is crazy. And this is actually always the top one, the top of 10 vulnerabilities, the injection. Okay, so let's talk about OWASP in general for a second. OWASP is a free, with no intention of profit, non-profit organization, and it's a worldwide organization that is basically there to help do create more secure web application. So the OWASP stands for Open Web Application Security Project. Much like the ISC chapters, OWASP also has chapters worldwide, and I think you should check Berlin because I'm pretty sure OWASP has some sort of representation in Berlin. These people gather together from time to time. Lately, they do virtually, obviously, for obvious reasons, but they gather together, they have these conferences, and they post a lot of information on how to make web applications more secure, even mobile applications. They have a lot of information on their website. It's called OWASP.org. Okay, so every 3 to 4 years, the OWASP non-for-profit organization will post the top 10 vulnerabilities in web applications. They posted in 2013 and 2017 and even before that. And out of this 10, a lot of tools are created to address those vulnerabilities, to detect those vulnerabilities. And you can run those tools free of charge. For example, let me give an example to show you how. Let's first look at the OWASP itself. So this is OWASP, all right? And it's a whole community, and you can probably become part of the community. All you need to do is register. You don't need to pay anything, but very big on security. They do a lot, and there's a lot of representation to both Europe and Israel there, so it might be a good idea for you, and also the US. And not only that they do their information sharing, but it also creates tools. So for example, the OWASP ZAP is a tool that can help you, if you run it, then it can probably help you map the vulnerabilities of your web application. So this is OWASP ZAP, it's one of them. And then, where's this? This is another one that we can run, for example. What is the domain of GCP?
grandcityproperty.de.
Okay. So we can run this on your DNS record and
It's like what SSL Labs is doing, or Qualys, or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And here you can see that there are, few vulnerabilities, but overall, I think your website is perfectly secure. You see all the certificates, and you see all the hash algorithm that they use here, and you can validate the signature, the digital signature behind it, and the certificate behind it. You also have the CISSP, so we also use that for check of revocation, and we get all this information about GCP. Now let's check. Let's take one. Wow, Shachar, can you think of oh, you know what?
Of a non-vulnerable. לתת.
Yeah, this is one organization pro bono to help them. Unfortunately, they don't have that many skilled people there. So as we run the assessment, we encounter a lot of problems with what they have in security, what they have and don't have in security. And here you can see the red color is kind of screaming at you. There are problems here, right? The server is vulnerable to a drone attack. They use SSL version 2, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And
Really?
they actually raise money on their website, you know? So again, this is a lot of information that you can get just by using those free tools out there. So OWASP will do that for you. And OWASP, not only that they create those tools, they also create the standard for the top 10 vulnerabilities that all these tools now look for. All right, if you take care of this top 10, just like the CISSP, it's 95% of what you can address out there. And the rest of the 5-10%, we'll leave that to the specialists, to the hackers of hackers. All right? So the same thing for us. So the first one, the first and by far the most popular vulnerability that you can find online are the injections. So the SQL, the XSC, the LDAP injection, any directory injection when someone inputs different characters than what intended. So let's say that we ask for social security number, we don't use those numbers because we can now use characters, ABC characters, and special characters to query your database. So this will be a representation of the website executing queries on the database. The next one is that broken authentication and session management, those areas of authentication, session management that are often implemented incorrectly. So again, programmers, software developers, they develop web application, can be anything you can think of, probably day-to-day usage of something that we actually use, and those session management are not properly implemented. They create this vulnerability, this open window for the attacker to execute their attack. Cross-site scripting mentioned before, as you browse in one site and that site takes you to another site, simply because that original site is vulnerable for scripts written in it. You can mostly find it in forums, in professional forums, in areas that the users are free to upload their own text. So some will upload a malicious text, a malicious code, that if that website is vulnerable, then that text will become executable code as the user enter that page, and it will take them to another page for session hijacking or clickjacking and other malicious activities. Broken access control is when authenticated users are allowed to do that allowed to do are not properly enforced. So you have users, you have authenticated users. They're allowed to do some of the actions, but they're not properly managed according to the need to know and list privileges and separation of duties. Separation of duties is more internally for your organization, but need to know and list privileges, so they get more information than what we intended. Attackers can use those identities to get their information or the extensive information more than what we intended to present to those users. Security misconfiguration here, the security settings should be defined, implemented, and maintained as defaults as defaults in any application. So many times, this is top 10, many times we miss those security configuration. We simply upload the web application and we simply trust it without considering security by design. And this takes me back to vulnerability number 2. Sensitive data exposure. Sometimes in your URL, if your website is not as secure, in your URL you can find sensitive information. For example, social security number, some sort of representation of the user, maybe a username, maybe even a password, in the URL, in that website. If you look at the source of the page, you can get a lot of information if security was not considered. So that, again, goes back to the table of developers, web application developers. We want them to think about security as they build the application. Okay, this is the CISSP. Have them think about security before they do it. Insufficient attack protection, that means that our web application is vulnerable to something and we don't have the capability to detect and log and respond to potential attacks. That means that we didn't think about security corrective controls. Cross-site request forgery is the twin brother of XSS, only this one, the flaw is on the browser side. Again, the vulnerability is on the server side, but the attack vector is the browser, the less secure browser. So if you have an application that is able to detect the version and the browser that the user actually uses, then you can run the test for CSRF, and if those browsers are vulnerable, right, then you simply say, or let the user know that, hey, our website does not support Chrome for this version, or Internet Explorer version 7. Okay, you should work with a newer browser. This is the message we want to get. And then developers, as they develop the application or any application, they most commonly use a directory of some sort that is out there that will have a set components, set functions. For example, if they want to use the function of authentication, multi-factor authentication, instead of writing the lines of codes for multi-factor authentication, they can go to GitHub, which is a directory for functions, previously developed functions, and download that piece of code from them and implement it in their application. However, when they do that and they pull set of applications or previously developed applications and borrow it from outside to our organization, they need to consider more trusted sources of these functions, of those lines of codes. And sometimes they just miss that. And then as a derivative of this is the unprotected API. API is the interface between web applications and databases. This is the interface. This is what connects those web applications. And that area also tend to be unprotected, especially when we talk about environments like Java, which are those applets, small applications that were mentioned before. And those are cross-platform applications. They don't require specific browser or specific machine to work on. Any questions on this, guys? Okay. As you saw, I marked some of the some of the OS with the exclamation mark. You see that? There are three: the XSS and CSRF. Those are the three that you're most likely to encounter in your CISSP exam. Okay? So elaborate on them. You should elaborate on all of them, I think. If you're going to be a security professional, you should learn more about this area, because it's pretty easy to talk about and easy to perceive, because we all use web applications all day long. Okay, but those three will probably are more popular in your CISSP exam. Now, as we conclude our domain 8 and our bootcamp in general, let's look again at the differences between virus and a worm. Okay, a virus propagates by user intervention, so they rely on the users to make mistakes and to click here and to click there, while a worm is a form of a virus that doesn't need the interaction with the user. Once executed, it can propagate itself throughout the systems, throughout the vulnerable systems. So the worm is a threat, and it automatically looks for the vulnerability in the next asset. Okay, going back to the risk management formula and the way it's operated. Are we all good there? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. One name that you need to consider in your CISSP is Robert Tappan Morris. This is a simple way of, hey guys, ISC saying, hey guys, right before we finish the book, let me throw another piece of history on you, as if you don't have enough to remember by now, right? This is another way of wasting our freaking time. So here they remember the name Robert Tappan Morris, who allegedly was the first one to write a virus. Okay? And there's a whole explanation here of his story, and that idiot somehow penetrated our CISSP. Where do ISC use this in the exam? They might use it to represent the name as they do with the cryptography algorithms. So they use Diffie-Hellman, El Gamal, Robert Tappan Morris, AES. Okay? Robert Tappan Morris is an idiot. That's all you need to remember for your CISSP. He's an asshole. We hate the guy. Okay? That's it. I don't care about his story. He will not help me pass the CISSP other than the fact that we don't like him. Right? Cool. That's all the attention we're going to give the idiot. Polymorphism is the multiple shapes and forms of a virus. So a virus of some sort can take a unique form, but once detected by antivirus companies, those companies will now set a signature. So all antivirus clients out there immediately detect that virus, right? However, if the attacker realizes that there's a signature against their program, against their virus, they now create the same virus, but different program, different shape. This is called polymorphism, okay? Multiple shapes, multiple, the ability to change over time of viruses, okay? So we have polymorphism, we have polyinstantiation. All these poly will probably be in the same question as answers. This is the way to manipulate your brain, all right? Don't fall for that. Polymorphism is lots of shapes. It's in Latin, okay? And I'm sure some of you know Latin better than I do. Last but not least, we talk about data integrity as we do application security and as we do software security. Data integrity in software security is executed mostly efficiently with a FIM, File Integrity Monitoring System, okay? The system, the mechanism, the application that can run and check all checksums of all files, and make sure that those files were not changed in an unauthorized manner or by unauthorized subjects. All right? Are you all with me?
Yeah.
All right. Go get it. That's it. We're done. Hey, applause. People. Yay. Yay. I couldn't be more happy for you guys. So,
Wow.
here we are. Yeah, wow.
Who
That's
keeps
your
muting me?
CISSP. What's that?
Someone keeps muting me.
No, not me. I'm not doing that. Maybe Kano. Kano has the look of a
Yeah, he does. Eh?
It was me, yeah. There is a strange noise. I was wondering
It's-
from where it's coming. That's why I've
Maybe
actually.
it's the rain.
Yeah, it's the rain.
Here. Is it better
Ooh.
now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, good. So it was the rain and it was the window here in my office.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, congratulations.
It's been a long week.
It's been a long week. Yes, I agree. It's been a long week and it's been hectic, and we managed to condense, to put together in a very short period of time a lot of material. And I think your mission now is, as Shachar mentioned, put those areas of knowledge on the wall and start scratching out those areas that you are in control, those areas that you're comfortable with, and look at the areas that you need to put more time and effort in learning them more and elaborating more. I think now you're in a better position to start looking at the whole exam, the exam as a whole, and I would ask for your opinion, your experience, anything. Share with us, share with the group.
It's been very informative, and yeah, there's definitely a lot.
Yeah. But it's not as intimidating as before, right? I mean,
No.
we pretty much sliced it And I would look at it in, you know, from that perspective that it's doable, I think, or not. I don't know.
Definitely doable.
It's doable, but still, if you ask me, if you right now register me for the test for 15 minutes from now, I don't know if I would pass.
Okay. Do you want to?
I mean, it's really interesting to see. I mean,
So let's.
I know that we are going to do an test after that, but it's really interesting. I mean,
Okay, so let's do this. Take a break now. Take a lunch break now. Let's reconvene at 1 o'clock your time. Let your mind rest. Okay? When we reconvene here at 1 o'clock, we're going to start a 3-hour straight exam. No pauses, no going back, no knowing through the exam if I answered correctly or not. You can use Google and you can use the materials next to you. But take the 3 hours full exam here, and I'm going to be with you guys. Okay, so I'm going to look at class marker and I'm going to look at your advancement. But you have 3 hours for 150 questions. How's that sound?
sounds challenging.
Sounds like I need a beer now.
But look, so using Google, what is the purpose of using actually Google? Because actually, okay, maybe it's from the learning perspective, but
Not copying the question type of using Google, but if you have a phrase here and that you're not sure about, you can use just to learn, you know, to enhance your learning. We all want to learn. I don't want to test you. This is not ISC. We want you to keep both value and volume, right? If we work just on value, then I would ask you to get the correct answers and take all the time you want. If I would ask you to work on volume, I would ask you to just, you know, get the number of questions regardless of whether it's right or wrong, learn. Now I'm asking you for both 150 questions and try to pass. Having Google next to you will probably waste more time than gain you knowledge, right? So have
in the test, by the way, if you don't know the answer, you have to
guess.
You have to guess, yeah.
You have to guess, yes.
And by the way, I had a conversation yesterday with my girlfriend. She's a doctor, and she told me that if you put C, okay, in medicine doctors, in German medicine certification exams, the chance that you will pass.
You know how many times I heard that, and that's not true for CISSP. Or any security certificate, by the way.
Just to tell you about the way that the German medicine system is working.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Okay, guys, so let's take the next hour and 40 minutes to digest, to process, to rest, okay, before you start your 3-hour exam. Let's reconvene here at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. your time, after lunch, after, you know, go to the bathroom, after, I don't know, resting. Get ready for a straight 3 hours exam of 150 questions. That's all up to you. I want to see you guys deal with the questions, deal with the volume and value of your exam. All right, guys?
Okay.
All right, I'll see you in an hour and 40 minutes.
And I will show up at maybe 1:15, something like that. Just pay attention.
Yeah, I'm going to be here at 1 and starting the exam.
Okay, but I will show up 15 minutes or 20 minutes later because
no worries.
I have already
Carlo, you have 2 hours and 45 minutes.
That's fine. You will have the 3 hours anyway.
It is what it is. Okay, guys. See you later.
Bye,
Okay. Ciao.
Bye.